Hello, everybody. It is Sunday, the 17th of November. Now, I'm trying to pack an awful lot into this, and I hope I get it together, and I hope you can follow me. I want to talk about the power of storytelling, because we are imaginative beings and we are storytellers. And the magic, so to speak, it's not magic, but so to speak, the magic of storytelling. Now, again, we are apparently in this awakening, although I see people flying off in all different directions, but awakening to a real truth. I think there's very little of that here at the moment. But the truth is in the old teachings, that we are beings of energy, that we can become aware of more than what we are aware of in just the five senses. There are other layers to ourselves. So if we shift into those layers, we get a different perspective, a different knowledge of the reality that is around us. And I would say, yes, an expanded knowledge of the reality that is around us, that we would otherwise not perceive. Now, in order to create that shift into another state of awareness, we need to energetically shift inside of ourselves. That is inside first. The shift occurs in you. You are the Stargate. And then all those other things, the kingdom without, will be added onto you. You will see according to what you have energetically become. And there are different ways of creating that energetic shift within us. And there are tons of different ways in this world. And that have been used by religions or by shaman or, others that went the way of the mysteries, which are not mysteries. I'll come to that. So, in order to create a new energy, a new feeling inside of ourselves that will open the door to a different knowledge, people have used symbolism. Symbols. We have emotional reactions to shapes. It's used in a big way in advertising. Shapes and colors. So that can be used to create a shift, an energetic shift inside of you, a different emotion, which again, combined with a thought, will create a feeling in the heart. And then you see with the heart. So symbolism. Music has been used in a big way. Chanting of mantras, which will create a feeling again inside of yourself. Chanting of mantras, what else is there? Dancing, yes. This is another thing that was used to create the shift. Traditional religious dances. And none of those things are random. They are based on a knowledge. They are very old chants, and they do not change because they will always create the same outcome inside of yourself. That is the knowledge of how to create a doorway. Traditional dances, they are set movements that have been handed down from generation to generation. The old symbols, the old symbolism. That is actually, it is knowledge that people gained through, I would say, trial and error, most likely. But they worked on that, knowing what they were doing, until they found the correct symbol, the correct chant, the correct dance that would create inside the person a specific thing, therefore open the doorway to a specific knowledge. And here comes another way, and that is the way of storytelling. And that is really the way by which you can get the masses. Because a story will create a thought and an emotion in you. And that is really what religion does in a big way. They are the storytellers. They are the magicians that use the story. It's not magic. That's the thing. But, so at the moment, the way of religion, the way of storytelling is very much falling apart. Yeah, because people are applying reason. God forbid. He does forbid that you think for yourself, you know. You should believe. Anyway, so we have these people going around tearing this thing apart, especially Christianity, especially the New Testament. Either they go in the way of, oh, Jesus was no real, there is no historical evidence, or not enough historical evidence. At the same time, you're seeing the other side digging around like mad, trying to find some kind of historical evidence to back this thing up, you know, put it on a bit more solid ground, you know, to keep the believers online, you know, in line, on board. So, and another way, and I've just watched that yesterday, was very interesting, is that, again, and others go that way as well, where you can find earlier stories that are very much like the story of Jesus. Yeah? And that were much earlier than Christianity. So they say, no, the story of Jesus is not real. It was actually based on earlier stories. You know, and then those stories are real, or whatever. Either which way, people are getting ready to throw this thing out of the window. And I really don't think you should. Absolutely, you should not. And if you go the way that it is historically incorrect, or, as I said, it's based on earlier stories, so it's not actually the story of the character Jesus, and for those reasons we throw the story out, then you have not actually understood what the story was. And it does absolutely not matter whether Jesus actually existed. The story is set. It is a spell. It is created to create in you a thought and an emotion, to create a knowledge in the heart, to create a reality. That is what it is set to do. It is a spell. Yeah? And the fact that, you know, those earlier stories have morphed into new characters is just because they had a story that worked for them, that did what it was supposed to do. Again, this is not random. Those characters are not random on what they're doing or what they're telling you. It's not random. It worked. It worked on people. So if they have something that works, they will just slightly change the setting and the name and the character. But in essence, the story will stay the same because it works. So really, if we throw this story out for all the wrong reasons, we have never seen what the truth actually was. And then all they will do, as I said, at the moment they're trying to back the story up by finding some sort of historical evidence that they can use. So we stay with the story, or Christians will stay with that story. or if people actually manage to throw this thing out altogether, discredit it in that way and throw it out altogether, well, bummer for them. They will have to create a completely new story, but they will. They will create a new story. And we will have never understood what the story did in the first place, and we will run with the next story. And it will create in us and through us a reality. So there is the understanding that we need to have. Now, there was a thought in my head about, exposing these things or thinking about these things. And I'm kind of wondering if the story, because it does not actually have to be a God story or God spell. There are other stories in this world, powerful stories, especially in recent times, and we can bring Hollywood into this. They are the master storytellers. So it does not have to be a God story, any story that creates this. Because, and here's the point, in order to create, you need to believe, you need to feel the feeling of this actually happening. You have to be really into the story. And then here comes the point where your body does not know the difference. It will create the feeling. In the source, there is no judgment, and we don't know what we're doing. There's a combination of three things, and then why does anybody think that something good will come out of that? We need to understand. What I thought, and that is in many of the old stories, and I think it was maybe something that was in The Lord of the Rings, and as once you see how it's done, the magic will disappear. It will no longer work. That was the story in The Lord of the Rings. Once the Master Ring is destroyed, magic, all the other rings will lose their power, and magic is destroyed completely. The point of all of this is it's not magic. It's not magic, it's not mysticism, it is science. This is knowledge of a greater reality of ourselves. This is full-on science that is masquerading as a fairy tale of all the strange things, but that's what they're doing. It is science that is masquerading as fairy tales, as mysticism, as religion. Yeah, and you tear away the religious part, but you never see the science. It is a truth that is masquerading as a deception, which is, as I say, it's really strange, but that's what it is doing. It is a truth of ourselves. So, and again, the story in itself contains elements of that greater truth, especially the New Testament contains, there's so much in there that we need to unpack once we get out of the God spell, or out of the fog of mysticism. I really want to get into a couple of things that are in that book that we need to consider, because that is real. That can happen. It has happened in this world. Whether it happened exactly in that story does not actually matter. It does not matter. I mean, any of those stories, if it's 2,000 years ago, it is a story. By now it's just a story, but the story works. Yeah, so it really does not matter whether it was real or not. But I would say there are parts of that story that describe a reality, and there we must really start to look at this as science. I said, get out of the mysticism, out of the God spell, look at this as science, as truth, focus. And then we need to understand what actually happened there, because for once there are two different ways in the New Testament of how we can work this, what we can do, and there are a lot of pitfalls that are already shown in that story, that we do not need to go there again if we learn from the mistakes of history. And that, I would say, is history. So again, throwing out the entire story, burning the book, is you destroy knowledge. Don't do it. So the way, again, we're going from the way of the cross and the other way of continuously give to one another. Even the way of the cross, the way of Jesus, what he did in this world, what materialized as a reality, what we call the miracles. And folks, it is not far out. It is happening in this world now. We hear about energy healings. We hear about stuff going on. It's real. Yeah, again, that is reality. So what he did, there were so many different things that I would say were done in different ways and on different levels. Yeah, there's so much we need to understand. But the way of the cross, the way of the one, and the denial of self, what I believe happened there, and what I believe happened was Moses. Every time you have a figure that everybody is focused on, the one, I think that is exactly what's happening. The people believe on the figure, and all the energy of the people goes through that one, who can then, like a prism, focus the energy into a laser to one point. I think that's what's happening. That's what happened with Jesus, that's what happened with Moses. So it is the focus of our energy, and again, the creation of belief through a story, which gets people to focus on the one in the first place. You know, he is the Son of God. There's the God spell. Well, to my mind, Jesus was a very highly trained, and you have to be highly trained, I'll come to that in a minute, to actually withstand the energy and to be able to focus when that wave hits you. So he must have been extremely highly trained to do that. He was a master of the mysteries of the occult, and that is really mastery of yourself, mastery of your energies, and being able to withstand that wave and being able to focus it to a point. I think that's what they're doing. Now, the other thing is that whilst there seems to be, to me, and again, that is very what the ancients may have called, by all the native people would call very strong medicine. Yeah? Very strong medicine has got side effects. And I would say there is a side effect in this, in that the more they do that, and they are the ones that actually have to do away with self. That is the one point where something has to be doing away with self, to let this through, to focus. The more they do that, the more they lose self. Yeah, I really think that is what is happening. I'm quite sure that is what happened to Jesus. You know, he actually lost self. And then if they lose, with the loss of self, that is where the Hermetics say, you know, it can lead to insanity. Because with the loss of self, you lose the point that is anchoring you in this reality. And you could describe that as insanity. But another thing they lose, that you would lose if you lose self is you lose any sense of self-preservation. There's an instinct that you would lose that is attached to self. And then we go the way of sacrifice, because they have lost any sense of self-preservation through that practice. See, I wondered about why the 12 disciples were there, what their function was, And I think the function of the disciples is to look after the master. Yeah? And if we say, well, Jesus' glorious self-sacrifice, as a people that benefit from somebody being able to do that, should we allow that sacrifice? Or should we pull them back at some point and say enough is enough? Especially if you think that they are increasingly not able to stop it themselves. Yeah? So everybody goes to this glorious self-sacrifice of Jesus. And I keep saying, well, he didn't do it for me because I did not ask him to. And should we ask them to? If you think about this as a reality, and that is what is happening, should you allow that to happen? That one should sacrifice himself completely for the benefit of others. Yeah, and you cannot say that was his decision when increasingly he is no longer in a state to make a decision. Think about that. And then there was the other way. Again, as I say, that is the way of the one, and it is aided by the story, by the belief, by the God spell. And again, people don't know what they're doing. I mean, you could actually say that people, through continuously asking him to help, they were driving him into self-sacrifice. Did they know they were doing that? And if they knew they were doing that they were destroying him, would they have done that? Again, they did not know what they were doing. Right, and there was the other way, and that is continuously give to one another. And there is what happened at Pentecost. Because there was no focal point there of one. There were 120. Yeah, and I keep saying they were all Jews, but they were not the same nationality. And what they did at that moment is they gave the knowledge of their language to each other. So when they came out and a person says, why can I hear this man speaking to me? It's not because the man was talking gobbledygook. It's because he was speaking Persian. And that should not have been, because that was an uneducated fisherman or something. That should not have had that knowledge. That's what the astonishment was about. But again, in that was a completely different way, again, because there was no focal point of one. They were all given to one another. Again, to serve an intention, yes, because they were going to go out to preach the gospel in all the lands. So they needed to speak the language of those lands. So there was a need. But that was a completely different way. You see, there is so much to unpack in that book. There is so much that we need to understand. Yeah? And as I said, it already, I'm quite sure it already shows pitfalls of how we can go horribly wrong. Which, to my mind, Jesus did go horribly wrong. He lost the plot. He lost focus. And apparently there was nobody there to hold him back when he himself was no longer in a position to do so. As I said, there's so much in that. Do not throw out that book. Do not say it's, mysticism, occult, it's all about God. No, it is about us. It is about what we are capable of doing. It is a knowledge of how we create those thoughts and feelings inside of ourselves to open the doors to other knowledge. What we can do in those states and how we can go wrong. So get out of the fog. It is not magic, it's not mysticism, it's not a fairy tale. It's science, masquerading as all of those things. And we must get to the science. And once we do, it will not go away. You know, if you believed it was magic and then it's exposed to be not magic, well, then you lose belief and it's gone. But if you knew in the first place it never was magic, it was real, it was science, then you will never lose that. Because it is part of reality that you know. Something you know, you cannot unknow, you will not lose. That is why we need to get to that understanding. And here's the last thing I want to say, and that is why I have not opened the door. And I will not open the door. Because once we understand that, and it needs to be understood by all, but there may only be a few, again, that will be highly trained to do that. And they need to be highly trained, and they need to be looked after. They need to have a support team around them to keep them safe. Yeah? But as I said, it needs to be understood by all that this is a reality of ourselves, a scientific reality of ourselves. So, at the moment, this thing is happening to people. Yeah? They all of a sudden receive a motherload download. Yeah? And they're being blown away. Absolutely blown away. Because they had, well, either it just happens to them like a Kundalini experience, or they are actually seeking this. You know, like taking drugs or starving themselves half to death. But really without any clear idea of what it is they're doing, or when it all of a sudden happens without being prepared in any way, shape or form for what is about to happen. They hadn't thought about it, they hadn't reasoned about that, you know, and then, as I said, they get blown away completely. And then in that state, they're coming out with all sorts of nonsense of how they interpret what has just happened to them, based on pretty much nothing. As I say, and that is why I did not open this door. I fought this tooth and nail for over 10 years now. Because I have no intention of joining the merry band of space cadets. Yeah? That is sitting there. I'm so spiritual. No, you've been blown away by an energy that you could not control, you weren't trained to control it, and you did not understand. And you're pretty much fried. And now you're kind of trying to work your way back, and as I said, it takes all manners of really strange ideas of what has just happened. And I don't want to go there. Absolutely not. And I most certainly will not go there once I'm on my own, where there's nobody around me that understands what's happening, or you know, that can support me in any way or form. That would be nuts. This is strong medicine. And it should not just be used. Because we can. Because we're spiritual beings. It creates realities, and in realities there's cause and effect. Yeah, there will be consequences. Anyway, so yeah, I leave it at that for today, but really to understand really the magic or the spell, the power of the storyteller, that it does create something inside of you. And if you have a focal point like Jesus, It means that you give your energy to that focal point because you believe on him. But you are actually giving of your energy to one person that then will create an outcome. Yeah? And it's not, oh, it's the will of God or whatever. He is creating, that person will create a very specific outcome. And are you even in agreement with what they are creating? Because you're giving up your energy. So get out of the story and do it out of your own free will. When you can do it out of your own free will, understanding what it is you're doing, when you are in agreement with what they are creating. How about that? We all know what it is we're doing, and we are free to decide whether we want to give up our energy or not. Would that create a different world? Instead of being caught in the spell of the story and then doing it unconsciously. Anyway, folks, here, I leave it at that for today. I say it was a lot. I hope you were able to follow me. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.